Yesterday, Bradford City's head of football operations, David Sharpe, did an exclusive interview with Jamie Rayner. It's over an hour long, and in today's video, we're going to go through and break down the main quotes and takeaways that we got from yesterday's interview. If you do go on to enjoy today's video, please make sure to drop a like on there for me and subscribe to the channel as well if you are new. Can we try and hit 200 likes on today's video? And don't forget to get your thoughts in down in the comment section down below. Let me know down below your thoughts and opinions on everything that we do go on to discuss in today's video. Now firstly, the interview is over an hour long, so we can't cover every single topic in today's video. So if you've got an hour, maybe on a drive or on the bus somewhere, then feel free to stick it on, give it a listen. But in terms of some of the main takeaways, we'll start out firstly with David Sharpe saying that cover is needed for Josh Neufville. He said that Graham Alexander has tried a few things in pre-season, like Harry Ibbotson at right wing back. We saw George Lapsley obviously play there in the first half on Saturday, but I thought it was interesting that it wasn't necessarily described as a competition for Josh Neufville. It was more described as cover for him. And we did see at times last season where Neufville really did stand out and he had some really good games, especially at the beginning of the season, but there was certainly periods where he seemed to, tire, and we didn't really have that competition. Halliday provided it to an extent in around the December sort of time, but Ashby came in January and really did flat to deceive. He's obviously since moved on to Luton Town, but I did think it was quite interesting for Sharpe to say that it would only be cover that does come in for Josh Neufville rather than a competition. Now maybe it was just one of them things and I'm looking too much into it, but normally when a player is brought in, it is for competition, like what John McCracken has come in to prove and try and be to Sam Walker. But obviously Neufville's potential competition has actually just been described as cover, so maybe our decision of mine has already been made on Josh Neufville being the starting right wing back for next season, which obviously I'm not complaining about. He had a really good season on the whole last year, but I do think at times he could have done with somebody else just to give him a bit of kick up the backside, especially towards the late stages of last season. Sharpe also said that there or thereabouts pretty much all of the Jensen Metcalfe money has now been spent. Obviously we spent pretty tidy fees on Adam Phillips and Jake Beasley. We also paid a fee for Macaulay Gillespie, and then it's very much unknown how much we've paid for Henry Cartwright, but you can't imagine that is a cheap transfer fee given that Leicester kind of need money wherever they can get it at this moment in time, and obviously he is now signing from a fellow league rival. And on the whole, I've liked what I've seen from Cartwright. It could also be a case of Sharpe playing it down, so for those final couple of signings that we're not having to overpay for them, and Sharpe was very adamant on getting the deals for Beasley and Phillips done before the announcement of Metcalfe's departure was made. And obviously he knew from around January sort of time that Metcalfe would be moving on. He knew from around March sort of time when Caldwell went back to Wigan that Max Powell would be moving on. But I feel like I heard from somewhere that Alexander said he was surprised by the Max Powell departure, but apparently David Sharpe had a conversation with Alexander in March, so maybe I've imagined something or somebody's not quite telling the whole truth here. I'm not 100% sure, but according to David Sharpe, he knew from about January sort of time. Metcalfe's agent was very honest that he would be moving on, and fair play to him. We got a lot of money in for him there. David Sharpe also says that our budget this season will be around the same sort of ball mark as what it was last season, and he thinks that'll put us in around 13th, 14th for our budget. Obviously, he can't be 100% sure on what other clubs are spending. He was quite open with how much he thinks that other clubs are spending, especially Wickham. He highlighted them on a fair few occasions, because obviously they aren't spoken about loads given that they are actually one of the smaller clubs in the division. Certainly not like a Burton or a Bromley or anything like that, but they're certainly not a Sheffield Wednesday, a Bradford, these type of teams. And David Sharpe believes that we'll have a budget in around 13th, 14th, and I think with the squad that we've assembled, goodness me, God knows what teams in top 1 or 2 are spending. Obviously, we know Louis Barry was on 40 grand a week at Aston Villa, and he's now just signed for Sheffield Wednesday. It's crazy the money that is getting thrown around, but Sharpe says that our budget will be in around mid-table again. He also said that Callum Connolly is a direct replacement for Max Power. Sharpe also says that Connolly's played what he thinks is just as many games as Max Power as a holding midfielder in the Championship, and he also believes that Callum Connolly has better defensive qualities. And I know there's been big things made about this on social media, but I've always felt very relaxed about Callum Connolly playing as a midfielder. He's done it a lot in his career, and also the club have earned our trust now, and I think supporters need to remember we're not a mid-table League 2 side that are scraggling around to try and sign your Theo Robinsons and your Keelan Lavery's of the world. We're not that club anymore, thankfully, and David Sharpe for me has earned all that trust. Graham Alexander has, Ryan Sparks has, and so so on and so on. The club is clearly going in one direction, and that's up, and that's positive, and we need to try and remain positive as much as possible. I do think there was a conversation about Stephen Humphreys, because it seemed like we were shoehorning him in a position that he hadn't really played, but Connolly has played a lot of games as a midfielder, and I do think a lot of people were overreacting about that. I did a video over on SHD Plus yesterday talking about who I think should be the Bradford City captain. Without giving my full answer, Callum Connolly was one of those players that was towards the later stages in terms of nominations for that video, but I'm feeling very, very relaxed about Connolly playing in midfield next season. I'm sure he might play in defence at times as well if we get injuries. I'm sure that's probably why we're not desperate to bring in another right-sided centre-back, because we know Connolly can fit in to that position, but like I've said, I'm very comfortable and relaxed with Connolly playing in midfield. Sharpe did also briefly mention that the Jensen Metcalfe replacement is still likely to come, and Bradford City haven't quite signed him at the moment, but he's very happy, and so is Alexander, with Anthony Sarcevic and George Lapsley as the options for the number 8 position. So it seems like Connolly and Cartwright are going to be the more defensive-minded max power type of role midfielders, and then at the moment we've got Sarcevic and Lapsley who can play in the 8. He also did mention Adam Phillips as well, and we've seen Sars play as a deeper midfielder in pre-season so far, and personally I don't think that's where you get the best out of Anthony Sarcevic, but I do think it will see a bit more of that passing range unlocked. We've seen it a few times. We actually saw it on Saturday. He put Will Swan through for a 1v1 and it was a brilliant through ball. And I think Sars, his passing range and chance creation is not really something that we've seen loads of him, given when he plays in the right of a front three where we expect Adam Phillips to play next season. So obviously Anthony Sarcevic and Jensen Metcalfe are two very different types of profiles. There's like what, a 12-year age difference between the two of them, but if Sars is to get more game time next season as a number 8, I do think it is important that he's playing regularly in our side, especially when he's probably a lot of people's favourite to be the new captain of Bradford City. But David Sharpe did mention that he'd like another body in there, and he does believe the Jensen Metcalfe replacement is still to come. In terms of the trialists, he included Nick Powell in that conversation. Obviously at the moment we've got Ben Hennigan, Reece James, Jordan Davies and Reece Welch currently on trial. I keep calling him Reece Welsh. It's the same bloody thing, but he says there's nothing imminent about them. You know, they've not made any decisions about them at the moment. I know it was Pete O'Rourke was suggesting that maybe Jordan Davies might be getting offered a deal by Bradford City. I wouldn't be against Jordan Davies getting a contract, to be honest. I think his wages would be relatively cheap, and given that he would be more of a rotation option, I don't think his injury issues would be that much of a big deal for Bradford City. But given that we've already got one or two fairly injury-prone players on our books, I'm certainly not desperate to get in Jordan Davies, although from the games that I've seen of him so far, he does look like a very tidy midfielder in there. David Sharpe also said he's a massive believer in Nick Powell. From kind of my own opinion of how he was speaking about him, I think if it was completely up to David Sharpe, he would have given him a new deal at this moment in time, but obviously we know Alexander's a little bit concerned about the fitness of Nick Powell, but we've seen him play 45 minutes against Halifax Town. That's a big boost for him. That's the longest he's ever played in a Bradford City shirt, and he's been here for nearly a year now, so hopefully in the next coming games in pre-season we can see maybe build up to that hour mark, and I think having a full Graham Alexander pre-season under his belt is really going to do him a world of good, but we need to be able to rely on him for more than 8 substitute cameos a season. We need much more from him out of that, but from what David Sharpe was saying, it sounds like Powell probably will get offered a new contract, especially if he can prove his fitness, but the other trialists they weren't 100% so sure on. We've seen it over the last couple of seasons where trialists are just coming in to, for one, obviously get them fit, and we're trying to do some of the more experienced players a little bit of a favour, but two, they're kind of just filling gaps for us at the moment where we've got players that are injured or not quite completed our full squad and got loads of signings in, or every signing completed, especially going to Austria. I feel like if there's ever a game where it's like, well, someone needs to do 90 minutes, you put a trialist in there rather than risking one of your own contracted players. Barring any outgoings, which according to Sharpe, there has been no further inquiries for any of our players. There's been conversations and stuff, but certainly no any official bids. Sharpe believes that we still need 3 more signings, a centre-back, and he sounded like that was going to be more left-sided. He mentioned Macaulay Gillespie, he mentioned Ibu Toure can play there, and he mentioned the departures of Kieran Kelly and Curtis Tilt. So given that outright centre-back, we've got Matt Pennington who can play there, we've got Aidan Baldwin who can play there, we've got Joe Wright, Callum Connolly and also Henry Cartwright. We have on paper got 5 options to play there. You only really feel very comfortable with Matt Pennington playing there, if I'm being completely honest, because I think Baldwin is better in the middle, although he can certainly do a job as a right centre-back. Joe Wright, don't think you get the best out of him as a wide centre-back. You've obviously got Callum Connolly, who has played there in his career but has signed to play in midfield, and obviously Henry Cartwright did that against FC United of Manchester, but for me looked much more busy and active in that midfield midfield position, but we know we need to bring in a centre-back. He says he's a big fan of Oscar Lunn in there as well. We obviously know we need to bring in another central midfielder. He did previously mention that he expects the Jensen Metcalf to still come, and as we touched on at the start of the video, maybe a right wing back as well if Alexander feels like Lapsley or Ibbotson aren't reliable there as cover across the full season. And the final real notable point that I took away from it was David Sharpe says that no other club has contacted him personally around at Graham Alexander, but he also says that other clubs might go directly to Ryan Sparks for something like that. But you would like to assume that if, say, a Preston, for example, given it was one of Alexander's clubs, came in and said, you know, what's the availability of Graham Alexander to Ryan Sparks, one of the first things he'd do would go to the head of football operations and speak to David Sharpe. So that sounds good, that sounds positive, because obviously Bradford City's biggest asset is our manager Graham Alexander, massively overachieved at Bradford City last season, and we've had 2 incredible seasons under him. You look at his CV and his record, absolutely fantastic manager, and I'm so glad that he's ours for at least another 2 seasons. I think maybe January or even the end of the season the club might be thinking about a further extension for Alexander. If we have a similar sort of season to what we did last year, we simply cannot afford to lose him. But that is, in my opinion, the biggest talking points from yesterday's interview. Like I say, feel free to go over and check out the full interview. It's brilliant, again, by Jamie Rayner. He tries to get in as much detail out of David Sharpe, but in a very respectful manager. I think he's an absolutely brilliant journalist, is Jamie Rayner, and it's a very good listen. Like I say, over an hour long, so we can't cover every topic in today's video, but talking about the main talking points, they're my thoughts. Let me know yours down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hype the video as well. Thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon for another one.